Hey, this is Mike from Minimal 3DP, and today I'm going to start a new series. I'm working on a Sovol SV08. I realize that's an older printer, but hey, I needed to wait for a deal, pick one up. And what I plan on doing is putting the printer together and then performing all sorts of upgrades because I think it's a great deal and a great printer. So at least from the reviews I've read, I'll give my opinion after I've gotten it set up. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Now I picked up this printer off of AliExpress, and I'll be honest, you can get some pretty good deals there. This one was sub $500. I'll have to look up what the price actually was. And it's cheaper than they have it on Amazon. Also, looking carefully, they actually had it in the US warehouse. So it got here really, really quickly. And the box, as you can see, is in perfect shape. So we're just going to open this up, my handy Swiss Army knife. Let's bend all this back, and hopefully I don't hit the camera. And as you can see, it's really well packed. Put that aside. And I've had this sit in my office now for a little less than a month, but it's right in the middle. Everything seems to be well packed. I'm not seeing any problems right off the bat here. Let me just look at this really quickly. It looks like it's using 2G, so that obviously is something I need to be aware of when I set it up. They have a pretty thick manual here, and it looks like it's pretty well detailed. So we'll sort of see how that goes. So what I'm going to do is let me switch the camera around to my desk, and then we'll just start basically pulling out pieces and setting it up and getting it rolling. So give me 1 second. Let me change the setup of my office here, and then we'll get it going. I've gone ahead and started the timer with this, and I'm just starting and stopping the timer depending on whether I'm actually working or talking. But I figure that way I can tell you exactly what it took to put this together. Now, according to the directions, let's see if you could sort of see those. They recommend placing it at an angle where this corner of the printer is coming off the table. And I believe that's to help put the sides on. And so we'll go ahead and get started with that. This is the front right here with the Sovol. And let me get the rest of the sides out, and then we'll put those on. This may not be crystal clear, but this is the back left corner. Each of the corners are labeled. And then if I look at the posts, I can see they're labeled as well. So that is super handy. And that should make my life easier, because that way I'm putting the right leg in the correct spot. And so here's Z2. So let's see if we can just slip this in. And sort of looking at how this goes. And sort of looks like it goes like this. So it slips right down. And that just locks in place. So that was pretty easy to do. Now Z1 is in the other corner. So let me zoom back. So I'm going to try putting on Z1. Let's see, Z3. Z1. Z1 is in. Let's do Z4 next. That'll be this front corner up here. I'll apologize with sort of the angles I'm doing here. So that gets a Z3 left. So let me turn the printer, get the wires out from underneath. Going to put the extruder in the back here so it's out of the way. And I'm simply going to lift up Z3 and slide this down. So I've gotten all the legs on, and looking at this, it looks like all of those are correct. Now I'm going to install the screws in here, and unfortunately it looks like some of these are different size screws. That's a bit of a pain in the butt, but let me go ahead and get the screws in, and then we'll be right back. All the hardware is pretty well packed. I'm also noticing they gave me some actual Allen wrench style screwdrivers. So let's get these screws out and see about tightening everything up. Now, something interesting I'm noticing on screws, they have the measurements on here. Hopefully you can see that. But then they also have the step that each of these screws go with. So right now I'm down here. I have step 1, 2, 3, and 4. So again, pretty handy. I really like that. I like the fact that we have both the measurements and we have what size or what step these go with. So let's put the step 1 screws in. Those are right here by the bed. So we'll do those. I'll put those in and then come right back. I have the step 1 screws in. I'm going to point out that I have about half dozen screws left. I'm just going to put those aside that way in case we need them. Now on step 2, I have 4 of these. Now I'm going to try to show this spot on here. So on step 2, it's going to be on the same side as the step 1 screws. So it'll be the 2 front corners facing me, and then 2 holes that are facing away from me in the back. Let's go ahead and get these in, and then we'll be back in a moment. So I switched over to the side of the printer. Hole 3 is right here, so screw 3 will go here. Screw 4 is down on the case itself, 3 on the leg. Now these are both different size screws, so I'm going to put in 3 first around the perimeter, and then I'll go back for screw 4. Now I should point out, you notice they have a thread locker on a lot of these screws already, so that's good. So we'll get this screwed in, then I'll do the other 4 corners, or other 3 corners, so I'm doing the 4th. I just want to point this out on the case here. On one of the screws, the case itself is plastic, and a little piece of plastic from the case got in the screw hole and wouldn't let me screw it in. I was able to just take a pair of tweezers and pull it out, but I'm just pointing that out, that particularly when you have a plastic case, that might happen. I really don't feel like that's a deal break for a real problem. Just pointing out, I couldn't figure out why the screw wouldn't start. Now I'm on step 4 now, and that's on this bottom hole, and that is going into the case. Now these are real small screws, so I don't expect them to provide much in the way of support here. And let me find another driver. I really don't want to use the Allen keys. I'd rather use my drivers. And here we go. It's right here behind me. So just getting the number 4 screw in. And that's it. Now I will point out the step 2 and 3 screws, you have just enough screws to put the case together. So let me pause and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I'm starting to put on the top, and that's actually fairly easy. You just need to take this, and it's just going to slide in. There's a groove here on top of each of the legs. Now, let me, oh, you got to put it on. There is a right side, so I need the Sovol label facing me. And we're using the step 5 screws now. So we have 8 of these step 5 screws. Let's get those situated on the top of the frame. And those are, just to show you, right here in the corners. So let me do that and we'll be right back. So I have the top on. Now what I'm going to do is take the gantry and slip it in diagonal. It's a C shape, so I want the opening in the C to face me. And I'm going to set this down in the corners here. And what I may need to do is take off some of this tape here, so I have a little bit more room. Now, let's give that a second. Let me look at the directions again. I want to point this out as I got this seated in here. There's these little plastic brackets that the gantry is supposed to sit on. So I'm pointing those out because you do need to push it down a little bit. You might need to wiggle it around some to get it to fit. Now, in the case of where we're at right now, we're going back to the step 1 screws. And there should actually be 2 screws. I guess, let me look at this. There's 2 screws right up in the front corner here that'll hold this into the bracket. Now these, you remember, are M430, so they're longer. Oops. So we're going to put those in, and there should be, I have 8 left, and I have 8 holes. Again, we want to make sure the gantry is sitting correctly, and I pushed it down a little hard and then got the back out of whack. So you want to sort of make sure it's sitting straight. You also want to make sure you're not running over any of your wires, which I am not. So we're good to go. So let's get these screws in. Now we'll just go to the next step. Now the next step is attaching the filament holder. Over on this side is the way they're representing it. I'm not sure I like that or dislike it. I'm just going to put it on, and I'll probably wind up changing that around in the future with one of my upgrades. So it's wrong. This needs to go on the right-hand side of the printer. I'll point that out. So I have step 6. Now those are screws with washers. So we want to put the washers on, and the washers need to be against the bracket. So we have the filament, the spool holder here, the filament run-out sensor. And the next thing we're going to do is the hot end. So let me switch camera angles and we'll take a look. Hey, this is Mike from Minimal 3DP, and I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for supporting the channel, and also let you know that if you're interested, I've recently launched a Patreon page. On Patreon, I have 2 membership options, which for just $5 a month, that really helps me out and generates some additional income that I use to plow directly back into the channel. I've taken a lot of the tools I've developed over the years. You can still use all the tools, the calculators, and I'll continue to add functionality. But what I've done is, like in the case of the Orca Slicer settings, you now have the ability to export out these new settings that it's generated for you as an Orca Slicer profile. Over on the cost calculator, you now have the ability, you can save your invoices so you can go back to them, some reviews and analysis. If you're logged in with Patreon, you click Analyze, it'll actually go out, find video with the most number of clicks. So I also have reviews and analysis on various 3D printers, so you can get some additional information. So again, thank you for your support. I appreciate it. And now let's go back to the video. Now for my next step, I want to very carefully take off the cover here. Now it's on by magnet. Now I need to do this carefully because I do have a fan connected. Let me turn around, make sure you can see it. There's a fan connected right here. I'm just going to unplug the fan, put this aside, and then we actually have 3 screws that we need to put in. So the hot end's going to sit something like this, and we need to screw it in 1, 2, 3. And this actually has its own set of screws. Step 7 screws. There's only 3 of them, so that's nice and easy. And let me put the hot end on, and we'll be right back. I screwed the hot end in. I just want to give it a wiggle so there's no play here. They did give me another nozzle as well as the heater brick here. So I actually have a replacement that came with the kit. That's pretty awesome. I want to point out a mistake I made here. I'm actually going to need to take the hot end off. In the back here, I ran over the gantry. I actually need to bring the hot end here underneath. The wires all need to be on the inside of the printer. So I have that wire run on the outside that's incorrect. Let me unscrew things and shift it around. So I reran the harness, and this, you can see now, is inside the frame. There's a little bracket here. This is going to use screw for step 8. And there's actually a hole here on the gantry where I'm sure this fits in. So I'm just going to hand tighten this for a second till I get it started. And back over here, get this tightened in. So again, you want those wires. You don't want to be like me and run the wires over the gantry. They need to be under the gantry. And the little bracket here, as you can see, is on the inside of the printer. We should need to start plugging things back in for our next step. And we have, we're going to do the screen next. So let me zoom in on that, and then we'll get that plugged in. Find the screen because I've put it somewhere else. So you'll notice it's hard to see, but that says EXP1, EXP2. These cords are labeled. So we want EXP1 to go into the EXP1 slot. These are going to go in at an awkward angle, sort of upside down. So let's get those situated. And then EXP1, or 2, I mean. So we got that in, and then this will just slide in the front here. Push it down so it clicks in place. So we're good to go there. I won't take off the plastic till I'm done. Now for these next steps, I'm just plugging in everything. What's pretty cool is, like, this is the filament runout sensor. So I know what everything is. I actually thought I had a problem here with the camera. This one's labeled LED, so somewhere here I must have some LED lights, or in fact, right up here. And so let's plug those in. So let me plug in everything off camera, and then I'll be right back. As I mentioned, everything's labeled. Back here, I have the Y, or X, here's Y. Y is on, if I'm facing the printer, the right-hand side. So I'm just plugging in these stepper motors. I have one more connection here, and let me see if I can figure out what that is. I think that's the camera. I'm going to plug that in. That's plugged in the back here. And I have a couple things here not plugged in. Let me see if I can figure out what those are. And I'll be right back. Well, I got all the wiring in. The LED is in the front right corner. The camera back right. Y, X, and then the filament runout sensor up top. Now the next thing it tells me to install, and this is before I plug in the Z motors on the bottom, is to put on the tubing. Now, for right now, I'm just going to leave the fan off, but I'll go ahead and put it on in a minute. I actually have to spin this around a little bit so I can get to the connector here. Or not connector, the stop. And I'm just going to push this tube in. And then this coupling needs to be up here towards the filament runout sensor. Let's get the little blue thing off so I can actually insert the tube in here. I have a bunch of these little clips that I'm just going to put around here to hold up the wire. So the wire is, I'm basically just connecting it to the PTFE tubing. Sort of just twist these and they'll basically fall into place. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is you want to make sure that the hot end cabling is all sort of straight. You don't want it really twisted. It's not good for the wiring. I have a couple of these left over, and let me add one more. Now what I'm going to do is just sort of be lazy and clip several of these on so they're here. I'm not going to fasten them, but they'll stay on there good enough. So I can find them later and I'll find someplace to put those. Now let's see, let's get this a little bit better off here. Now with these on here, what that's doing is keeping the wire off the bed, which is exactly what I want. Now, the last thing I need to do is I need to turn the printer on its side, and we'll need to plug in the Z motors on the bottom. And I guess before I do that, let me put the front case back on. I'm just going to take the fan plug, plug it in right here where I took it out. Ah, there we go. Now it does look like I have a little screw hole here right at the top. And I think I read somewhere that sometimes this comes off easy, or maybe better yet, that's supposed to come through there. So there's a little like knob here this goes over. So I wasn't quite slipping it on correctly. Now I'm going to turn the printer on its side and get those plugs plugged in. I'll show you that. Now, if you look carefully, you can see here's the plug. And then this is just going to go around here on the side of the extruder. I'm just going to plug that in, take off the tape, if that's still on here. And let's get this on here, get my head out of the way. So I'm just plugging these in. I'm going to zoom in on the booting here so we can play around with getting it configured. And I'll do a first print off camera, and I'll show that whenever I start to do my updates. To get the printer to connect to Wi-Fi, I'm just going to go to the USB that came with the printer, and I'm looking for this Wi-Fi.config file. I'm going to open it with a text editor, and let me move this onto the screen. So I need to fill in my Wi-Fi name as well as my password. So I'm going to do that off screen, and then we'll go over and install it on the printer. So here's the USB right here. I'm just going to take this and plug it in on the right-hand side of the machine. Now, according to the directions, I want to wait 10 to 20 seconds after inserting it. I want to do it with the printer powered on. What I'm going to try to do right now, it's showing my IP as 127.0.0.1. That's the default IP address. I want to click the button, go down to Advanced, and Show IP. I want to click this again, then go back to it, and it should show its IP on my network. So there it is right now. So this machine is connected. So that's great. That's pretty easy. Let's go over and real quickly, we'll see if we connect online. As you can see, I've connected via mainsail to the printer. I can see the camera right here. Let's see what this warning is. Looks like there's probably an update to be had, but I'm not going to do that today. Let's just hit home. and just make sure the printer homes. And as long as this homes, I'm going to call it a night. Now, I'll point out, it took me about 2 hours to get this printer all set up and configured and put together. Realistically, if I wasn't filming, I could probably do it in about an hour, maybe less. So again, pretty easy to deal with and put together. I'm pretty pleased with it. Everything is looking good. I love the fact that I'm pretty much using stock Klipper with this. I think there's some slight differences, but it's not that big a deal. Overall, I'm really happy with how easy this was to put together. It seems like a really solid machine. The only other thing I'm going to show is the top here is not 2020. It's just aluminum, which is fine. There are handles on the side here. You want to pick it up by the case as opposed to the top here, which I think you could real easily bend this. Let me just show you. So again, it's thinner aluminum. So you want to pick this up from the base, and this is sort of the opposite of the Voron. The Voron, I think you could break the skirt real easy if you tried to pick it up from the bottom. Usually the handles are on the top. So in this one, the only real difference here is you're going to have handles on the case on each side, and you pick it up that way. Again, overall, pretty pleased with it. We'll do a first print next time I'm back, and we'll also start looking at what upgrades we're going to do. So with that being said, I hope you have a good night. If you have any questions or comments, post them below. Thanks. Have a good night.